Hello, Charlotte.
Hello, Anna. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm okay.
Thank you for being on Beyond the Dance Floor and finding the time to speak to me. I really look forward to our conversation, and I've prepared some questions for you, which I'm really eager to hear your answers to.
Okay, let's go.
First of all, tell me where you are and how you are dealing with the coronavirus situation, and how are you adjusting to the situation?
Okay, so I am in Boston, Massachusetts, in the United States. And well, for me, it's kind of a blessing because I am home now on week 10.
Okay.
And for me, I get to spend time nonstop with my daughter and my husband, and she's very happy I'm not traveling at all. And I'm just here and cooking and being a mother, more so than anything else. So for me, it feels actually a very special time. And I have to also say that it's been good for the body to relax. I'm sort of looking back and I'm thinking I've been working nonstop since I was 14. So suddenly giving the body a break, giving the mind a break is actually very healthy for me. But of course, when you look around, there's a lot of stress with everything going around, and it's hard to see and hear of people. Obviously, by now everybody knows someone that's dealing with it, so it's not nice.
Yeah.
But you can only do what you can do to help the people around you that is going through it, right? So it's sort of it's a mixed bag. It's an interesting time for sure.
Yeah. Do you feel that having had this experience of, like you said, you've been working your whole life and been busy, and suddenly you're at home and actually really enjoying this time and finding that it's also beneficial to you in many ways, do you feel you're going to change something after this also in terms of your approach to traveling and work, or do you think you will just go back to normal?
Well, that depends on, number one, in America, we're still in lockdown, and I think we're going to be for quite a while still. So it depends a lot on what the country is going to look like.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get back to the students. I miss my students.
Mm-hmm.
I miss dancing.
Yes.
And even if you give a lesson and you dance around in your living room, it's not the same. I miss the interaction. I miss everything. I think every reason why we're doing this, a lot of the reasons why we're doing this in the first place. So whether I will do the same amount, I'm very I let things flow as they go. Obviously things are meant to change, so we'll see. I mean, I didn't do that much anyway because I wanted to be a mom. So in that sense, I was traveling, but I wasn't traveling in any crazy amount. So for me, maybe go back to what it was before.
Okay. Yeah, and we have to see basically how our business and how our world looks after this, and how long it will take, to recover as well. Okay.
There's not much we can do, right? It's out of our control.
Yes.
So
for now, at least, for sure, yeah. So tell me, if we start from the beginning, tell me a little bit, how did you come into dancing and how did you progress, and the different stages of your life and ending up in America, basically, how did it happen?
Okay, so in Denmark, as I'm sure you're familiar with because you've been in Scandinavia, I started dancing when I was 2 years and 2 months.
Okay.
Children's dancing, once a week. And I only did that, for the first 8 years until I was 10. Mm-hmm. So essentially I just did children's dancing. Then I started doing ballet.
Okay.
And then I did jazz. And then I did, we had in my hometown, it's a small town in Denmark. We had this show. Show dancing with singing and acting and stage. And I did a little bit on the side of ballroom and Latin, but it was not serious at all for me back in the day. And I think I was maybe, I was set to go. I wanted to go and do ballet, but my mother would not permit me to move to Copenhagen. I had an audition to go to the Danish Royal Ballet, but my mother would not permit me. And then I wanted to actually go and do West End or Broadway. That was my next sort of first love. and then there was one year where there was sort of a gap year, and I felt like I needed a new inspiration, and somebody asked me to dance with him, and I think we did. Let me think. We started in youth, so I did youth 10 dance, and he was a few years older than I was. And I sort of got bitten by the bug, and then I changed partnership to dance with Jens Werner. And within starting to dance with Jens, I moved to Copenhagen, and within basically 9 months of dancing with Jens, we moved to London. I had just turned 18.
Okay.
So I was relatively green in ballroom information, but had done a serious amount of dancing and sort of training through the ballet and the modern and the jazz. So when I moved to London, I was fortunate because immediately I had access to, the best teachers in the whole world. Hans and Anne from Denmark were extraordinarily helpful in guiding us. And so that was August 89. And then in, what was it now? Let me think. In February 2001, I moved to New York.
Yeah.
And I've been around in the US, New York, I've been to LA, and now we're living in Boston with my husband and daughter. My husband is not a dancer, so it's a little bit of a different life when you're not living with someone that's a dancer and you're not working with someone that's a dancer. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of the tour around the world.
So far, at least, yeah.
True.
No. Okay, what about your experience? Because you said that you did Latin as well, yeah, and of course a lot of stage dancing, ballet, and all of the components of dance, if you wish. Mm-hmm. How did you feel it influenced your ballroom feeling, career, knowledge, experience?
Well, I was actually, when I started out, I was much more of a Latin girl than a ballroom girl. I have some atrocious pictures to show you.
Perhaps we should have done this, when you can put on Zoom as well the pictures. I don't know how to do that yet.
Well, at least it turned out okay. No, I mean, so for me, dancing is dancing. Mm-hmm. And if you understand your body as an instrument, I think you should be, with a little training, able to certainly understand how to move yourself in different forms, right? I do not accept that you say, oh, well, this is that and that is not this. That certainly for me does not gel. Mm-hmm. I feel if you understand your body as an instrument, then you should be able to dance many kinds of forms. There's certain things, for instance, something like when they do body popping and hip hop, I'm not very good at that. But again, if you trained a little bit, perhaps you would figure out how to move your body in that way, because it's very stylized and it's very specialized. But in terms of, to answer your question very much, I feel today in my teaching, I often teach ballroom through Latin, because in Latin, it's still very, very, it's still clearly taught how to lead and follow.
Yeah.
In ballroom, I find that sometimes I run across couples that just seems to be dancing their choreography.
Oh, really?
And I was clearly raised in ballroom to do lead and follow.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, the Latin is very useful, especially to the younger generation, especially when you have the kids that are coming up and they feel more comfortable in Latin, because I think it's easier to dance because at least you can find your own balance and things. Ballroom, if it sort of has that image of you have to have a big hole and a big top line and stuff like that. So the minute the kids get taught that, it gets very uncomfortable to dance ballroom if not done well, right? So in that sense, I use Latin often as a tool to teach through. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm probably better now than I was when I danced. But maybe not. Who knows?
That's really interesting. What is, coming back to, you touched a little bit on the subject, what is your passion in ballroom dancing? What is it that you love the most with it?
Oof.
Is it partnering, lead and follow? Is it, you know, artistic expression? Is it the mechanical, technical elements?
Well, obviously, you need the technical elements in order to do
Yes.
the dancing, right? So it's a big component thereof. But the technical components are only there so you can get out what's inside, right? So for instance, from myself, I don't think I was never in this because of competing. It was never about competing for me. I was very fortunate. I had partners that were great competitors.
Okay.
And without them, I don't know that I would ever have made it in terms of results, because it just never turned me on to beat somebody else.
Okay. Yes, I understand that.
It turned me on a lot, and what was driving me, the passion that was driving me, was being better than I was yesterday. And that still to this day still drives me. But what I love about it, I think there's something that goes on that's, you know, you can't really describe it in words, what goes on when you have good dancing, right?
So the magic,
it's a language, isn't it? And it's a language that doesn't have any words, but it's a clearly understood language between two bodies. And once you understand that language, there's a lot of liberties in that language, and there's a lot of emotion, and there's a lot of expression, and there's a lot of conversation without even a word being said.
Yes.
So for me, I think it was always about that. It was always a way of making people in the audience feel what we were feeling at that moment in time, or in this case, what I was feeling because of dancing with my partner at this moment in time. It was about the beauty of it. It's so beautiful. And I don't mean the dresses and the hair and the makeup. I just mean the actual movement. How it's possible to move so seamlessly and so smoothly. It's an extreme skill, right?
Yes, absolutely, of course. Yeah.
So it was always more about the dance than about the trophy. I don't have a trophy up in my house. I don't have a photo up in my house. It was never about that.
Okay.
It was about what was created in the moment.
In the moment, yeah.
Okay. And still is.
Yeah. So you obviously danced with several partners of the highest skill, highest level. Tell me, did you have to adjust in a different way to each of them, and not only in terms of mechanics and, you know, technical elements, but also in terms of the temperament, you know, the drive? Like you say that your partners were the ones which were motivated in a maybe different way than you were. How was the adjustment process for you?
Well, I kind of, you know, if I look at, I think, again, if you take the difference between Latin and ballroom, right? Because we are in this frame and we are somewhat confined. I never felt confined other than in the early years when we didn't know what to do. But there is freedom, although you are in this frame where you have to be all the time. But I always look at myself as a little bit of a chameleon, right? Because for me to adapt to the individual dancer is understanding. It makes me a much better dancer, because if you dance with somebody that's the same height, or you dance with somebody that's much taller, or you dance with somebody that has a square body, or you dance with somebody that has a rounded chest or rib cage, they're all different, and you have to be able to adjust to that. So that's just the physical side of it. But then everybody hears music differently.
Yes.
Everybody reacts differently to an audience, or to the orchestra, or to a competition, or what happens. You know, I've been on the floor, you know, once with Andrew, and I'm thinking, what's going on? He's taking off like a rocket. And I didn't understand why suddenly he would move. And it was like, oh, he was basically reading the floor so that we didn't have to stop, because he understood if he slowed down, we would have to stop. So he accelerated so that he would get out of the way of other couples. I had no idea, but could just feel a different energy, right? So it's sort of a navigation, like driving through crazy traffic in London or anywhere in the world, right? So that's certainly, there is definitely sort of, like you say, a temperament and an awareness of how people react. And then there's just the interaction, right? On a business level, that we all operate very different. We're different people, right? And different things that are important to us. And at the end of the day, if you're in business with somebody, you have to respect them and you have to just make things work, right? I see a lot in younger couples that when it's not working, it's easier just to change the partner than make something work. Then just, okay, fine, we'll find a way to make this work, right? So this is definitely that sort of, you find a way, you don't just give up. You find a way to navigate things. But physically and on the dancing side of things, it's actually very exciting to explore all these different humans, different mentalities, right? And how you make things click.
Yeah. So as a female part of the partnership in the ballroom, especially, yeah, like you said, in Latin, I think there is a perception that it is easier to perhaps be your own character as a female in Latin, yeah? Perception, not necessarily that it's true, of course. That's why I want to ask you, what do you feel was your role as a female partner in the partnership? Did you feel, you were the engine? Did you feel you were sharing? You know what I mean? Did you feel you were, how was your experience of this?
Well, number one, both people move around the floor, right? So we have to have the same energy. It's the same steps. It's the same amount of times around the floor. So the effort is equal. The skill set required, whether I move forward or my partner moves forward, or I move backward or he moves backwards, the body operates in the same way. So in terms of effort and skill and ability, to have a good partnership, you need to have a similar ability.
Absolutely.
So then the experience was always sort of figuring out, yes, there's this perception that lead and follow, and the lady is not doing as much as the man, and these kind of things. I get that from some of the younger girls. I don't want to follow. I'm like, you're missing the point. For me, I feel they're missing the point, because follow for some reason takes on a negative connotation.
Well, it's not, yes.
However, if I look at women in the 21st century, we're all strong, we're all capable. We don't exactly need anyone to take care of us in most cases, right?
Yeah.
But with that responsibility comes also a lot of juggling and organizing and doing. So whenever I put my arms up and I dance with a great dancer, for me, that's time off.
Okay.
It's not time off from physical activity, but time off from making decisions, time off from being in control. So my part, I can truly go into my sensing part of my being, and women are perfectly cast to be the followers. Because we have strong senses, right? We're mothers. We have a strong sense of intuition and touch and feel and just energies from people. So for me, it's time off. It's time to be free. It's time where time essentially stands still, where I'm not having to be responsible, but I can just react. And I can, in that reaction, then I can share with people how that feels to me. So I find that as much of a skill, because obviously there's not a lag, but there is a difference between the man making the decision of what has to happen, especially in a competition situation. When you have good guys, they never touch anyone, right? They never bump into anyone. It doesn't happen when you have a good leader.
Yes.
But on the flip side of that, he needs to have somebody in front of him that can actually have the ability to be so calm, right? To react and just go with it and not worry about what's next.
Yeah, not worry about the reaction that he is going to get should something change. Yeah.
There has to be trust between the two, right? That I know he's going to take care of me. He's not going to bump me into anyone. He knows I've got his back, right? And for me, that's a mindset.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mindset to be able to go to that place, because you cannot worry. You cannot worry about what's next, because in reality you don't actually quite know what's next.
Yeah,
Because
you don't know what to anticipate. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It could be what normally comes, but it could also be something totally different. So it kind of keeps you alert, and it keeps you alive, and it keeps you
On edge. Yeah.
In the moment, right?
Yeah.
And in the moment you lose sense of space and time. So therefore it's free. For me, there's freedom and there's peace in that moment of dancing. Yeah. And of course, a competition is hard work. Yeah, it's hard work for everybody. It looks easy when they're good, but it's not good. It's hard work. But there's still spaces in a competition where there's room for that. And definitely in the demonstrations are just heaven in terms of that kind of place.
Okay. So at some point, of course, you had to come to the decision to retire. Can you tell me about how this decision came along, and how was the process of adjusting to the retirement and the life without competitions? And yeah, how was that experience?
It wasn't, I mean, the decision was kind of made for me. I tried to dance after Andrew retired, but it was difficult to find the right.
Because you were quite young, yeah, as well, when you have retired.
Yeah, Andrew retired in 2000 and I was 29.
Yeah.
So it was still young, and I tried to dance afterwards, trying to find the right situation, and it was difficult to find the right situation. And I thought, okay, better just to stop. And it was hard. Not competing. It wasn't the competing that was hard. It was I think it was the identity, right? Because I can only imagine in this particular time where you and I are chatting right now, the dancers must be going through and figuring out, if your identity is only in being the competitor and the dancer, and now suddenly you cannot dance, then what is your identity? Who are you? What's your value? Right? What is your value if you are not suddenly the dancer, right?
Or if you're unable to dance for one or the other reason,
yeah. So for me, it was, dancing has been with me through some very tough moments through my life, and dancing was sort of my first love. So it was hard. 18 months, I found it hard to retire, not because I wasn't competing, not that portion of it, but just that sort of adjustment into finding
the new you.
Yeah, value, that I felt I had some value to give to couples, and not making, being conscious enough not to, this is not about me. It's easy to put up your arms and dance with the couples, and oh, you're so good, oh, it feels so good, but I always felt that was cheap. I always felt like that was a cheap shot. So I kind of had to stop myself from doing that and sort of say, no, this is not about me. You're not paying me to dance with me. You're paying me to get some value into your dancing. So I had to really sort of sit down and reassess, what value can I bring to these couples that I'm teaching. But it was good. It was healthy. It was cleaning through a lot of stuff, right? It's like taking your closet and going through it and really clearing out
the unnecessary.
Kind of how it felt like retiring. But it was definitely, it was tough, I have to admit.
Yeah. So as a teacher, just as you mentioned now. What kind of teacher are you? How do you find your methods? Do you like to demonstrate? Do you like to dance with people? Do you like to show or explain the information and for them to find their own way? What is your, do you
Mhm.
think, method?
Well, it depends a little bit on whom I'm teaching.
Yeah.
So if you're teaching the younger kids, you kind of, for me, I believe it has to be fun,
Mhm.
because there's nothing worse than seeing these kids standing
Oh
there.
yeah.
So for me, when I'm teaching the kids, we play through exercises, we play through games, but we play with a lot of seriousness behind it, but we play. Um, I try as much as is possible because it interests me, but I assess, especially when we go up through sort of the adults, I try to assess who they are before I teach them.
Okay.
Um, because I feel that if I understand a little bit about who they are, then I can teach them better.
Mm-hmm.
I try and find out which kind of learners they are. And very frequently in a couple, you have different learners.
Yeah.
One will be a visual and one will be a tactile learner. So I try to figure out who they are. Typically, I don't dance with them a lot until they're ready.
Okay.
I give them things to do. And I mean, if I teach somebody of a higher level, I will dance with them. And in that sense, I will do exactly, let's say, as the men lead me, and often I fall over and they take me off balance. So, but the day that I don't fall over, then they instantly know that they have become better because I'm not falling over anymore.
Okay.
So I give them very honest feedback. I can be tough when I have to be tough. I will be supportive when I have to be supportive. I've had some stellar examples of teachers behind me and that taught me. So I feel to be a teacher, you have to care, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Of course.
and I feel the kind of dancing I want to see does not just rely on the technique of things. I need to see something where there's a human behind, and that they come with some more authenticity and more power from the human behind. So if you want to see that in the dancing, you also have to raise the humans as you go along, and try and make them understand that it's yes, of course it feels good to win, but there's more than just that. So when you won, then what? Then what are you going to do once you've won? What is it then about?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I try to raise them as whole as I possibly can. And having said that, I know it takes a village. So it's nice that there's always a team of people that work around a couple that manages to support the various areas of growth.
Okay. It's very interesting. What about generally the ballroom style and the future of it? How do you see it? Yes. How do you see it in terms of development and also in terms of keeping to the traditions? Because of course, smooth, for example, is becoming very popular nowadays, and even kids are doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose, I wouldn't know, but I suppose for someone who is outside, who is not really in the dancing, perhaps it's more interesting to watch or more easy to understand, maybe a smooth couple rather than a classic ballroom dance. How do we keep to the values of the classical, ballroom style, and what can we do in order to protect it, and should we protect it, and what can we do in order to not deviate from it too much?
Well, I think it is in the hands of the people who teaches, right? So we have to be responsible here. I think smooth is fantastic, but I don't think smooth is great if you don't look at it on couples that doesn't have a good foundation and good
Mhm.
ability to dance. Then it's actually
Not as
not
good.
the reason why we're in love with smooth is we've seen some of the best couples in the world that reside here in America, and all of the ones that are at the top are decent, quite decent ballroom dancers as well. So to the people that travel around the world and teach us smooth, because the ones that are traveling and the ones that have had the career in smooth and now has the career in smooth and are at the top, they've all had good ballrooms. So I can only hope that they promote
The
great
foundation of it.
great ballroom, because without it they cannot create the product that they have created. And insofar as ballroom, I think probably every great Latin dancer you have has done ballroom, haven't they? If you look at all the Latin dancers at the top, when they were younger, they did ballroom.
Yeah.
Why is it important? Well, because it creates a certain frame and a certain partnering understanding that, for instance, if you take ballet and you see them dance in partnering, they're not very good at it because they spend no time doing it.
Yeah.
But they cannot actually do partnering in the sense of moving around two and two. Mm-hmm. They're very good at their lifts and things, but the actual sort of dancing around is not so good. It's not prioritized, which is fine. You can take the amateur Latin. I mean, little Austin here from America now, and Sasha and Arena, they're both fabulous ballroom dancers. Mm-hmm. Really good ballroom dancers, right? So I feel the teachers that teach the kids when they come into the studios should really not permit them to choose a style. Mm-hmm. They have to do both, in my opinion. Yes, ballroom, I think, is more difficult to feel of sense or be inspired with from the young kids, but there's so much to teach them. Right? It has so much to teach them. So they certainly should not really, they should really take it on for quite a while, because it will help them whether they choose to end up doing ballroom or Latin, doesn't really matter, or smooth for that matter, right? So there's avenues here. There's a lot of skill and a lot of awareness that really will help them in the future. But again, it's in the hands of the teachers. Yeah. So hopefully we can cross our fingers.
Yeah, and especially in the hands of the teachers who deal with the kids from the beginning and at the earlier stages, because the values and the ideas, I guess, are instilled at this time. And yeah.
For sure.
So when you are judging a competition, do you have any particular preference to style? How do you feel you're evaluating couples? Because of course it's very difficult. It is often, I suppose, a matter of personal preference of what touches you, but you don't always have someone who touches you. Is there any special style choreography? What do you think about choreography developments and things like this in order to get more effect?
I'm quite open to, let's say, if I look at the whole dance world and not just limited to one side or another side.
Yeah.
I'm quite open. I can see a lot of skill in many things. Mm-hmm. A big thing that interests me is you can have a couple that's very good. I watch them in the first round. I watch them in the second round. When I watch them in the third round and they're still doing the same steps, starting in the same place, doing the same thing, winking in the same place, that kind of, they lose me. Mm-hmm. Right? So for me, hopefully through those same 3 rounds, the music will have been different. Yeah. Okay. So I get it. In the younger years, yes, they kind of need a routine. But even in the younger years, you can raise them to have the ability to change if there's a couple in the way. If you nurture this early on, they can learn what lead and follow is, right? It becomes an instinct. And if you learn it early on, it literally becomes an instinct. They don't even need to think about it. Once they're at the higher levels, they don't need to think about it. They've learned it from early on, but it has to be instilled in them early on. If routines and pictures are instilled in them early on, I mean, I ask couples sometimes if I'm in a studio as a guest coach, and I ask them, okay, so now I've seen your choreography. Can I please see you dance? Just basics, just anything. And they look at me terrified. And this is when you know, okay, so for me, that's the essence. It's the essence of dancing, and it's the essence of competing, being able to successfully compete. So you're not in prison. So, of course, like you say, it's not always somebody touches you. Um, but it's that sort of locked in, am I just being given the same thing, and they go that I could see them the next day in the studio, and I'm seeing the same thing again and again, almost like a machine. Yes, there's a certain amount of repetition, of course, that has to go on in our dancing, but listen, react, surely that is what we're looking for. So I can forgive things that maybe technically are not 100% perfect if I see that there is a relationship between what they hear and how they're responding.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, I'm not looking for the perfect performance. I'm looking for a performance that makes sense. That makes sense to what we're hearing right now, because we're hearing the same music. Now, granted, we hear music differently.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I teach students, and some of them, they can hear a piece of music. I can put the most beautiful piece of music on, but they still just hear the beats.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, it's my job as a teacher to make them hear all the other stuff and challenge them out of their sort of routine. They're not allowed, okay, you're not allowed to dance your routine, so what are you going to do? Mm-hmm. So you kind of have to make them completely drop them in the swimming pool and see if they will sink or swim, right? In order to start developing a skill.
Yeah.
So, and obviously, as you very well know, it also depends on what level are we talking at, right? So a competition, it's a broad question. There are many kinds of competitions. It's of course a comparison. And sometimes I mark couples higher up, not because I like their style, but because their skill level is so much higher than any of the others of what they have to offer, even though I don't necessarily like it.
Okay.
But I have to appreciate that their skill is more developed than others. So it's always that sort of comparison, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Difficult.
Yeah, it's so difficult because it sounds like you're looking for something real, something that is, not, of course there is, you have to be rehearsed, you have to be looking put together, but for something above that as well.
Yeah.
What was your most memorable moment from your dancing career?
There's been a few. There are a few that stand out.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few that stands out. Obviously, there are a few practices that stand out. That I think probably most of us have left some of our best dancing in the practice studios, right?
Yes.
But of course, there's been moments. Making the final the first time as an amateur in Blackpool was very special. Obviously, winning at home in Denmark with Jens when we were amateurs was very special. Andrew and I have had some beautiful moments together. A couple of demonstrations that really were very special. One in particular, I ran away from people. I didn't want to talk to anyone. Because I knew I didn't want anyone to say a word to me, because I knew it was it was what we were working for all the time, right?
Yeah.
And I ran away from people. I didn't want to talk to anyone because I didn't want anyone to tell me anything.
That's really nice, because you were you wanted to experience this moment for yourself.
I didn't want to talk to anyone. It was just, I ran away. I threw things in my bag and ran away. And then very much also when we were asked back to dance, Andrew and I, 10 years later.
Mm-hmm.
it was so nostalgic. It was so sweet. Obviously, realizing that we're nowhere near as capable as we were before, but yet it was real. It was honest, you know. It was dancing, and it was nostalgic. Of course, we're 10 years down the road and nowhere near as good as we used to be. But
No,
it
they're
was,
not as rehearsed or as yeah. This
but for me, that was actually my retirement dance when we did that. So for me, it was closure more than anything else.
yeah.
And my husband was there, and he had never seen me dance. So in that way, it was extraordinarily special, because up until then, he didn't really understand why I danced, because he watched the current dances and he knew who I was, and he just never quite understood it. And after Andrew and I danced, he wrote me this most beautiful letter, understanding now suddenly why it was I danced. He could see why I danced. He suddenly saw the girl that he knew in the dancing, and he suddenly understood why I put all this effort and time into doing this thing, because he saw me in the dancing, and it was so different than others that he had seen. So for me,
Yeah,
it
that
was
must
very,
have been very special. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
that's beautiful. And so to round it up, what do you consider your biggest personal success to date until now?
You know what? Uh, I'm super fortunate. I have had a beautiful career. I practiced alongside with lots of amazing people that worked as hard as I did, but for one reason or another, didn't achieve the same things, if we say result wise, as I did.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have managed to have a husband, have a beautiful daughter, have a life outside of dancing, and still have people that to this day wants to have an interview with me, wants to have lessons with me. So it's never felt like work. Um, it has always felt like just a continuing passion from when I was younger. And it's taught me everything I know about life. So it's not, like I said, for me, it's not the trophies. The success is I'm here, I'm happy.
Yeah.
And that I can hopefully pass some of that on and make it a little bit easier on the people that are going to be going ahead and be champions in the future.
Thank you very much. I think, yeah, I look forward to putting this interview out. I think it's beautiful, all the things that you said. And I think there is so much experience and knowledge, and you obviously think very deeply about the things and your teaching and the dancing generally. So I really appreciate your insights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna,
Thank
very
you.
much.
Pleasure having you here. Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.